Hey guys, it's Pete from Pete for Anxiety here, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about again. Welcome in today's episode. Before we get started today, we need to cover a few things really quick. Let's talk about the Pete for Anxiety Patreon first off. It's only $1, guys. $1. What does $1 get you? $1 gets you into the exclusive episodes I am recording currently. I'm actually focusing on certain different diagnoses of things to show you guys what it actually looks like as it manifests in a person. So why not for $1, judges? Yeah, they said $1. I just checked with them too. See, they said it was okay. It was $1 anyways. Let's also talk about the Oracle Talk Radio Networks app. In case you can't be here live listening to me, watching this video, supporting the show, you can listen to it on the radio app. Why not? It connects us live to our 365 radio. Just go to your app stores and download the Oracle Talk Radio Network. You'll see the big old Oracle Talk Radio Network app logo right on there. Download it and it'll connect you to me, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, to Pete for Anxiety when I'm live doing my thing right here, informing the world and raising mental health awareness. So where are you going to be? 10 a.m. Of course. Come on. We just talked about this. Pay attention for once. Damn. Do y'all know how to listen? And as always, guys, like, follow, and share the YouTube channel. If you guys like what you're seeing, leave some comments, man. We want to know. I want to know if you like what you're on. You want to be on the show? Let me know. Hit me up at PeteVersusAnxietyPod@gmail.com. And as always, guys, enjoy the show. And by the way, did I mention to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well? Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure because some of y'all are hard of hearing in the back, may have to yell loud or get a megaphone or something. But, anyways, let's get today's show started. Y'all have a great one. Enjoy. Welcome into another exciting episode of Pete vs. Anxiety, the mental health podcast breaking the stigma that mental health is really talked about enough. My guest today is the host of the Humanity 2.0 podcast. Please welcome Vanessa the Vivacious. How you doing, Vanessa?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Oh, God, hell of a day,
I think that when you ask someone, how are you doing, it should really be followed by, now, how are you really doing?
Oh, no, actually, usually I ask people, how's your mental health today? Actually, it's funny you say that because, when you think about it, if you ask somebody how they're doing, they can respond with hello, I'm okay, I'm fine. Or then if you say, hey, how's your mental health? People literally just have to think about how they respond to that question, honestly. So,
Yes. 100%.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about Humanity? What is it? Humanity 2.0? I am.
That's right. That's
There you
right.
go.
Humanity 2.0. It all began with my journey with Are You Happy, which is a docuseries and podcast. The founder, Ate Trepka, traveled the world interviewing strangers about happiness in the attempt to find the happiest person in the world. And so that became a huge online community. It was broadcast all over all the platforms in short form content. And then they also had a companion podcast. So when I joined them, I started off as a volunteer, interviewing strangers about happiness, and then just really kind of like embracing the entire spectrum of emotion and how not everyone was happy, and learning about why they weren't happy and just their backstory. So then I moved on to hosting the podcast. And after all of that time, which was a 4-year span, I thought about all of the footage that I had that had never been used for both that docuseries and also for the podcast, and then their commercial work that they did as Happy Productions. And I thought there were so many beautiful moments of humanity. Why not take those moments and post them and edit them and then start a brand new show interviewing folks about humanity, and whether they feel like it's lost, is it something we can get back, and then how does it reflect in their daily lives? So I just think that given where we are in the current state of things, it's really easy to believe that there are no other folks out there with humanity, but there are. And so I want to showcase that and inspire others to, look for it.
Jesus, that's a lot. And I looked at your thing too. The other one, guys, it's 4 million followers over
Yeah.
social medias and everything else. It's insane, though. And all she was doing is asking people, "Are you happy?" And it's so crazy because when it comes to social media, everything that goes viral is just sometimes it's just hard to tell, though, man. It's like some stuff will take off and some doesn't, and it's just like a lot of ideas you think are great and others aren't. And it's just it's a great question though. You think about it, are you happy? Just like I ask people, how's your mental health? Because like I said, at the same time, someone's got to really think about that question. Are you happy? People go like, oh yeah, and sometimes you can tell people when they're just lying about it. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm so happy. Oh. You're like, oh really? So what are you so happy about? And then they're like, oh, well,
I have good friends. I have good family. There were so many different answers, but majority of the time, I guess, like similar to what you said, when you ask them about mental health and they stop and think about it, and they're kind of taking a mental stock, right?
Yeah.
Of how they really feel and then deciding what they're going to give you. The same thing would happen when we would interview strangers about happiness, because when we would ask them, like, if you could share a message with the world, what would you tell them? Or
Yeah.
for those that really wanted to share, they would stop and they would think about it. And you could see it in their face that the gears were turning. And especially when you ask them, like, what is your message to the world? They really just stopped and kind of did like this brief scan of their life and picked out something to share. And for us, it was amazing to watch, but also we were learning too. And I believe like what took off with the series, with the podcast, the virality of it all, it had to do with connection and
Hmm.
knowing that you're not alone. And a
Exactly.
lot of us are alone behind screens, behind the computer. We're walking around. Maybe we have friends, maybe we have support, maybe we don't. But we find that in each other when we're watching these videos on social. And so being able to see someone either just like you or maybe someone that's in a worse place than you, but knowing that they're still making it to tomorrow, that means a lot. And so I believe that's what contributed to the success that it still has today.
Yeah, it's similar to this too. This podcast now is officially booked all the way to October.
Wow.
And it's crazy though, because if you look at it, November, I started this thing as an idea in August. Okay. I got a network offer right before I even started. So I'm a part of the Oracle Talk Radio Network, where this episode's actually going to their Patreon section and things like that. I have an audio side as well too, that I take all the audio and extract it and move it over there as well for the people that enjoyed it, their podcast there. So it's crazy when I say it, because it's like at first, like November, I was out to at least July of 2025 where I started really pressing other people and start really pushing to get it's going, and then I have a live show I do weekly. So that one's
Mhm.
all the way out to October now. So now these extra things I do are like extra content from my other side or my YouTube channel and things like that. And it's so surreal, because it's taken off so fast that, I didn't realize people needed this as much as they
Oh,
did. It's,
yes.
and it's so
What's
so
needed?
overwhelming, because it's like at first it was overwhelming, and then it's like, because this is only my year. I'm a year and a half into podcasting myself, so I don't
Hmm.
have any clue.
Yeah.
Everybody's like asking me questions like I know. I'm like, dude, I honestly I don't know. I just took off overnight,
Yeah.
and it's like it's crazy how fast things just shot off, and then it's just the amount of people I meet is great. It's kind of similar to what you guys were doing,
Mm.
asking, just talking to people in general. I've had people on this show say the wildest things possible, and I had no even idea. If I would have told you that I would have going to interview in the first 2 months, I interviewed a Columbine shooter survivor. She was
Oh,
actually
wow.
in the library with the shooters, looking at them eye to eye, is what she told us when we were recording the episode, because I did a lot of audio stuff beforehand just to have something going to generate some buzz. And it was insane. Like, she was telling me, and I'm in a dark room, mind you. I'm sitting there watching, I'm visualizing this in my mind as she's saying this, and I'm like, oh shit, the shooter's right there, man. It's been an experience.
Yeah.
Needless to say, it's been an experience. Like, it's been great though, because I've got to meet people such as yourself. I meet other fellow podcasters. I actually landed a woman who has 3 top globally ranked podcasts that is coming in September. That I'm still shocked that she even said yes. Honestly, half of these people that say yes and exactly how we linked up to, it's just like, to me, it's just
Mm.
like, wow, okay, I mean, she's doing something right. They say yes to this conversation.
And the way that they open up,
Hmm.
is just so unexpected. Sometimes a person that you meet, that you agree to do an interview with, or anything, any kind of audio or video or anything like that, you just are surprised by what you hear
Oh
and
God,
the
yes.
depth. Like the girl with the library. Like, I can't imagine what all she shared, but just to have the
Oh, it was
fortitude
it
to
was
even.
intense. She gave us direct
Oh,
details,
yeah.
exact position of the people. She saw somebody get shot in front of her. All of it. She was giving us all the
Yeah.
nitty gritty, and I was like, "Oh hell no!" And I didn't expect
Right.
that coming either. I was like, "Oh man, what is going
Right.
on?"
Right. And so I feel like, it's like a two-pronged thing when you post these episodes out for people to receive, because they're able to hear that message, and internalize it, and then, do what they will. But then for the speaker also, they're able to, heal by retelling that story. So it just becomes so important, and how you put it out to the world for other folks to accept and to hear. It's a much needed service, especially with mental health, with anxiety, with any kind of emotional
Yeah,
issues. It's so important.
exactly. And it's funny when you say the things I didn't know. I interviewed a woman named Lucy Lenore. She's the lead singer of a band called Haunter.
Mhm.
She told us during the interview, had no idea this was even coming. She said, "Yeah, well, I suffer with BPD, which for everybody that understands, it's not bipolar. That's borderline personality disorder." And I was like, "Whoa!" Well, the funny coincidence is I was trying to get somebody that had it so I could talk to them about it, so someone can understand what it is. I mean, we could read these things in books all day, but what does it look like when a person has it? What did they experience versus what the book says?
Mm-hmm.
And she had told us that, and I was just like, she almost told us what exactly what happened too. So I was like, "Ooh, okay, Lucy, we'll definitely have to follow up for another like private interview.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she'll give us a little more deep entail." But it was great though. She shared that with us and then was telling us all about it. And mind you, this one's got like $635,000. So I'm starstruck on the other side of this thing that she even said yes to do it. But it was so cool because she was so down to earth, and just made it feel like you're talking to a normal person. She had no
Yeah.
no attitude, no stuck upness, nothing. She was really cool to talk to.
Yeah. I think that like as you interview more and more people, there's some stories that will just really stick with you and they just will
Mm-hmm.
never leave you. I remember one of the first interviews that I ever did was a guy at the mall. I went during Christmas time and I interviewed a balloon maker, and he was the most radiant personality I'd seen. Just, instantly you're drawn to that magnetism
Yeah.
of positivity. I mean, how could you not be happy making animals for kids all day, and
Yeah,
he
exactly.
really loved it. And so his responses were like very, very simple, do what you love, seek what's your passion and just be happy, just screw the rest and just be happy, just be in the moment. And it was really sweet. And then when they posted it, I read the comments on the video, and there was a comment where a gentleman said, I wasn't planning to be here tomorrow, but then I saw this and I think I'm going to stay. And that just blew everything wide open for
Oh, I bet
me.
it did.
And I was like, this is more than just 1 minute, videos on social. This is something bigger than that, where there are people that, say that they were lonely and they felt, like they were just utterly alone, and they were, planning that final step. But then they took a moment back and said, hey, well, if they're okay, then I think I could be okay too. And so it was a really big deal.
Oh yeah, especially because he said that all of a sudden, and when that topic comes up, it's like, oh, hit the brakes, screech noise.
Yeah.
We had a guest 2 weeks ago tell us that right before we started recording that he had the gun in hand that morning,
Mm.
was teetering on the edge of the bed, and it was like he told us all of a sudden, like he just went into this tangent because he was talking about his friend he had lost unfortunately last year to suicide, and he was just like, all of a sudden you could tell he was really disturbed by it, and then he just vented out, and I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm staying calm completely because I heard him say it and I just kind of kept going with the interview, and he said it again and everything like that. I had people messaging me all day, hey, is he okay? Is he okay? I'm like, yeah, I heard from him recently.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I think about it on a daily basis. And it's just like, what? And this is a guy it's trying to change the world. He's been creating this app that for kids that are supposed to help them like regulate their feelings and things like that. And I meet people from like all the way to Australia, all the way across the board. I've met these
Mm-hmm.
people, and it's so interesting every time you talk to somebody, just like you guys would interview people. It's just like you meet new things, you find new things out,
Mm-hmm.
and that right there was just like everybody was asking me, hey, is he okay? Is he okay? And like that means people are watching and hearing what's going on, and things like that. And when you tell people that, people are like, oh snap, they go watch that and see what happens, because they're so curious about, like, did he say it? I'm like, he said it several times. He started talking about it. He started talking about, hey, when you tell somebody, hey, just they'll reach out to need something, he said 90% of the time they're not going to reach out. That was his opinion to it, though, which is great because it was like it shows that even though you have everything going together, you still have those thoughts that loom in your head at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
and it proves it right there. And then I had another young gentleman who I still talk to, who I met through TikTok, which is like, it's a great because these people you meet are constantly in the social media light. They're constantly in the eyes of everybody. So people don't know a lot of things about this man. Started revealing that he had previously been an MLB prospect for the Toronto Blue Jays, which is a big team over there in Canada. For anybody that doesn't know baseball or anything, had it all, had the dream of baseball, was at the right college to be in position for it, had thoughts of killing himself all the time, all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And he's had so much death around him. It was like, I think it lost my count of like 6 or 7. He said, of people just around him have done it. And he had his own thoughts about it. And he was that, what society says, perfect looking guy, has it all going for him. And once again, it proves that, that things are just, not what they always seem. And I like this show because it reveals that. And he's like, people saw this episode and said, I've never even known that's what you were thinking. I'm like, dude, I would never even known that's what you were thinking. Like, you, every time you see him, he's always happy. everything
Yeah.
else and things like that until he started revealing his own personal feelings during the interview. And then it was just like, holy crap, dude, really? He's like, yeah, and he they just start telling you things, and they get real comfortable because that's what the great thing about the casual conversation is. Like, I can interview people all day, but it feels more robotic to me. But when you have a casual conversation, people tend to open up a lot faster to you.
Definitely. I feel like, every person that you interact with on a daily basis, especially strangers, say hello to them
Oh, I
and
do.
interact with them, because you just never know what conversation is going to unfold. You really don't. Like you said, you would look at someone and you don't think anything's wrong, but the moment that you make that connection with them and you say hello, or you say, how's your mental health today?
Yeah.
That is a big deal, and it allows them, the ability to speak on it and really just vent, or confirm if they're okay. And it's just imperative that we understand that strangers, they're important too. And if you can say hi to someone or even smile at them and acknowledge them, then that's a game changer too.
It's funny you say strangers because there's a gentleman where I work because I do customer service overnight.
Mm-hmm.
He came in and I noticed something was wrong. It's like I got this ability that I can read people a lot of times. You can see and they're really bothered with something. And I asked him, and he goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I lost my friend on December 18th." I said, "Oh shit, man, what happened? You want to talk about it?" I was taking care of somebody else. I said, "Hey, man, can you give me a second?" Took care of the person right behind him. I was talking to him for a minute, and he knows me by name. I don't know this guy by name, by the way, so I don't know anything
Mm-hmm.
about him, And we were just having a general conversation, and he said his friend was involved in a shooting. These guys had come past his car. And, just any other cars would have passed you. Never even think what was going to happen next. What happened next was four gentlemen got out of the car, ended up putting a bullet in the guy's head because he went to
Oh.
lean over to defend his lady. And the gentleman had walked up, named Chris. He walked up, and Chris goes, I had to look at my friend's body laying there, all these bullet holes, blood everywhere, her screaming on the phone, telling the 911 operator, hey, yeah, I don't think he's gonna make it, and he was so messed up about it. And I was like, dude, no one's ever asked you how you're doing. He's like, no, it's been affecting my home life and everything else. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
thinking, nobody in your inner circle asked you, like, hey, are you good, man? And you can clearly see something's bothering you. And they're like, oh yeah, they told me to go talk to somebody. Okay, I get that, but does anyone ask you if you're okay, man? Like, no, man, you're the first person to ever
Oh my
ask me that.
gosh.
I'm like, dude, I don't even know you, and you're telling me I'm the first person that asked you that question. And then that led to my next thought was just like, what is going on here? Like, what? You can clearly see the man struggling. He's been dealing with this for weeks. It's causing a problem. All you're going to tell him is go find some help. How about help him get some help, man? Clearly he's having trouble dealing with what he just seen. And then the friend passes away, and it's so traumatic, though. But I ended up doing one of those episodes like I did before with the beginning of this one, but it was dedicated to him, and he
Mm.
had no idea that's what I was going to do. It's like, hey, man, I run a mental health podcast. I told him a lot about the show. I was like, hey, what's your friend's name? Like, I'll give him a shout out. Hey, can you send some thoughts and prayers for, his friend named Sosa. And he had no idea what I was going to do next. And then he messaged me after he's seen it. He goes, oh my God, dude, that's so awesome. You're such a great person. Thank you for what you did. And I'm like, I'm just being me, man. Like everybody needs something out there, man. Dude, like if you come and talk to me and you want to tell me something, I listen. Like I have no problem doing it. And it's great because, like you said, me and him are complete strangers. Now I know him by name and last name. And we know people, and there's people all day that tell me crazy things like, hey, I was in the hospital, this and that.
Yeah.
And like I hear this all day from people. I
Sure.
think I think the wildest thing though, just kind of doing random like talks with people. One guy told me he'd walked in 2 minutes prior to his son being killed by a gunfire. I guess that it was a freak accident, gun fell on him, and tell the whole situation. And it was just like, what? He's like, do you really want to know how I'm doing? Yeah, man. How you doing? What's up? And he was just like completely just vented. And I was just like, whoa, hold up. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of started the idea for this podcast. Because then it was like, I had my own mental health issues I started dealing with. And I was wondering, like, how many other people out there like me have issues, and how many are not being heard or feel like they're not being heard. And that time we went down the rabbit hole, and here we are. This is, like I said, was an idea. Then the network called me and said, hey, do you want to do it? Or they reached out to me, had a meeting, which I didn't even think was even real. And the guy was like, yeah, I'm starting a new network of shows. Would you like to be a part of it? And I'm just thinking, is
Mm-hmm.
this real? Somebody pinched me. Is this real? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, man, I've got anything recorded, by the way. And he's like, hey, that's okay. I don't care. I was like, okay, let's go for it, man. Why not? Let's see what happens, So that here I am, and like I said, I'm out to October now, and it's just like it's all happening so fast. But at the same time, I'm enjoying every minute of it because these new people and different authors and things like that. I'm meeting, they're writing these books, they're making a difference, and people making a difference in the world. It's so great because now I'm making more connections. So
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah, there's something about the randomness though of, just going up to someone or, you letting someone in your room and then just, peeling layer by layer and just figuring out what it is that's, hurting them or what it is that they need to get out. I'll share one more interview story because that's, previous. But I remember walking up to a lady at night and it was like the last interview that I was going to do that day.
yeah.
And I thought, man, she looks so happy. She's in this like really cute outfit and she's got this little cute haircut and she just looks crazy happy. So I bet we're going to get a really nice, lighthearted story. And I go up to her and I had to, I asked her, if I could interview her and she was asking all of these like follow-up questions like, well, what is this for? And what is this meant for? And what's going to happen? And just a lot of questions. And then after we went over that, she was like, okay, sure. Why not? And then so I asked her the question and are you happy? And she said, no. And I was like, okay, why not? Why aren't you happy? And she went on to say that you think that you worry about all of these things your whole life, all of these things that you think could go wrong, and none of them do. She's like, you worry about so much crap that doesn't happen, and you waste so much of your life worrying about things that never happen. So then she goes on to say that she wasted so many years worrying about things that just never happened. And so that whole time while she's talking, she's like tearing up and I'm tearing up because, just her face and you can just see those years of pain and how, worrying about things that didn't happen really hurt her. And then at the end of it, I had to hug her because, it was just one of those moments where you need to hug that person. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, we talked for a little bit and then this guy comes up and like, just like a light switch, she was happy because this guy came who is her boyfriend and they were on a date. And it was just really strange to see her go from like this really raw moment to then being like super happy because her boyfriend's back, and it was just like the strangest interaction. But what she said stayed with me because we do worry about things, so much. We're consumed with anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
About things, and whether it's credible or not, we're still worrying about things regardless. Whether someone says, "Oh, don't worry," oh no, you're going to worry. That's just what we do. And it was just a profound point that, we do worry about things so much that, a lot of them don't happen. And so it was just something really interesting to walk away with. So for myself, dealing with my own mental health issues, from a young age till now even, and then anxiety having like a big push in the last years, I find myself kind of thinking about her and kind of reflecting on what it is that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
What can I do? Like, can I actually do anything to change those things? Or is it something that's more like excessive? Because it's like a what if about the what ifs, know? And I kind of get myself in check and say, okay, well, what is actually credible versus what's, not. And so that kind of helps a little bit. So by her revealing something so true to her, it stayed with me and it helped me on the journey as well. So
Yeah. So
crazy.
you mentioned your mental health. So what kind of diagnosis do you have?
Yeah. So it's funny that you said BP because I don't have BPD, but back when I was young, I'm 40. But
I'm 40 almost as well. So I'm right there with you, girl. We on the same age, Matt. So
nice. When I was younger, this was I want to say 2002, 2003, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 1. So that was like during my first year of college. And from what I read later on, because it wasn't really, really well written about yet, and there weren't a whole lot of medications out there like there are now, and a lot of discussions about it like there are now. That didn't exist back then because it was just, barely a thing that they recognized. And so it happened during college and I had an episode and I had to go to the hospital, and then it just snowballed into this thing where I was out of school. One minute I was in school and the next minute I was out of school. And throughout my life, I had these recurrences where I'd have these episodes and my entire life would just dissolve. Everything I built would dissolve. And it was really depressing and frustrating. So it took a lot of years to get to a point where, I could deal with it, but then like around 2007 or so, I stopped having these episodes, but I still had like the lingerings of like the depression and, you know, the anxiety and things like that. But yeah, it was a wild ride because at the time it wasn't a diagnosis that was like fully written about and discussed. So it was like, you know, living in the weeds and having doctors tell you, oh yeah, you're never going to recover from this. You're going to have a difficult life. And then one of them saying, don't ever have children because that's just messed up. Like just so many like really bad pieces of advice. And I just, yeah. Because like I said, it was the early days. So like they were, you know, just passing out misinformation left and right about it.
Yeah.
And it was something where, you know, you had to find ways to cope yourself. And so for me, it was talking to people that I could trust, though there were not many, but I did find like chat rooms of folks going through similar things where I could talk to them.
Yeah.
And then also, you know, working on music or visual things. Yeah, so that's what helped me. But then there was a period where I guess like maybe after like the first episode, I went to a hospital and stayed there for a while. And I discovered that the patients didn't get help from the doctors or the medication. What they got help from was one another and sharing their stories with each other. And you know how we often compare ourselves to that next person. And so we're like, okay, if I'm in this level and you're at this extreme level, you know, you're still here. So that means I think I'm going to kind of be okay because you're here, you know?
Right.
So because of that, and then just observing other people, yeah, and the doctors didn't care, you know, they just dole out the meds and they just walk away. And, you know, group therapy, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Sometimes, you know, it's just snacks. And then you meet other people like you. So you develop those friendships and that's great. But it really is the connection with other people of similar or opposite, you know, opinion or experience that just really helps you. And so I started kind of drafting notes on like well, I called it an anti-self-help book because I hated self-help books like Prozac Nation. Can't stand it. Like everyone loves Prozac Nation or they love to hand it out. But to me, going from I'm in this bad place and now I'm better, but not discussing that in between, that transition and that really difficult period where you just, you know, don't know what's up and what's down, that just really aggravated me. And so I would read other self-help books and it was the same thing. I was down and now I'm better, but no one really talked about that ugly part, right? That part where you can't get through it and you're struggling and you have no way of coping and you're just in that terrible transition, you know, before you figure out or before you talk to someone. And so I had an idea to gather experiences from other folks with mental illness and to get their personal perspective, because what someone writes about you isn't the same as hearing from you directly, just like you said with talking to somebody else. So I started working on gathering stories from other people, but then I found it's kind of hard because, you know, some folks don't want to talk about it. Some folks don't want to share it, you know, so it's just a really difficult balance. But I wanted to share their stories on one side and then get artists with mental illness to contribute, you know, drawings and art to put in there as well. So that's something I've been working on for years. And the title of the book is Complications and Metamorphosis. So that's something that I've been working on throughout my years.
That's awesome, though. I mean, you think about it. But yeah, that is the one thing, though. A lot of people don't want to talk about certain things, and they feel like they're being judged, or you know. And it goes with social media too. You think about it, people are sharing things, and it's like I just was talking to the band Lives Lost last night. Me and the lead singer Tanis and the guitarist were actually sitting there, we're having a conversation, and he was like, a lot of my songs have to do with my own things I've dealt with, and people are just like, well, I hate it. This song sucks, and it's like, okay, well, thanks for shitting on something I just worked on. But if you don't like it, you could just click on. And it's the same thing with anything. I mean, you post on social media. It's like for people to say things like that to people, it's just like I don't get it anymore, man. It just makes no sense. Like I've been there. Like everybody's like, oh, it's so bad. It's like the 90s were bad too, though. Like if you think about all these video game lobbies, like a lot of times I like to make comments to like a Call of Duty lobby. It's like a lot of y'all would never survive them. Because we were vicious. Like, let's be honest, we were nasty to each other. We were horrible to each other. We say the craziest things to each other. And that was just one source. Like, that's back when you had like maybe very limited social. Like, MySpace was still big at the time, just to give you a reference, you know. Now we've got Instagram, you got X, you got Facebook, you've got TikTok, you got Snapchat, you got Threads, you got all these different things, man. Favor, Rumble, like there's so many. It's just like it's insane because it just like makes your head go whoa. But then it's like at the same time, these people are taking the time to say nasty things to each other for no reason, and
Sure.
it's like, some of these guys. And then the other thing that really irritates me when it comes to mental health is these people with these clickbait videos. It's like you watch them. But then here's the next thing you do. Ask them when the videos end and the month ends that, like Mental Health Awareness Month or Suicide Prevention Month or whatever, whatever month it happens to be that month for them. Ask them a question about that topic and see what they do. 90% of them, I guarantee, aren't even talking about it anymore. Like, oh, that was last month. Yeah, but what happens after this video? Because the conversation doesn't end. People that are dealing with things, it doesn't end. It's like it continues to go afterwards. And it's just like, it's crazy. And then like when I meet new people, I'm constantly analyzing people too, because it's like, oh, I'm a mental health advocate. Okay, we'll see. And it's like you're watching them and it's like, oh, it's nice to throw that title around, but are you really about the subject? Like, and it's like one of these girls I'm watching, man, you could just see she's struggling because she makes this weird facial movement. And you could just see she's like trying to force a smile the whole time. And I'm like, dude, are you good? And she's like, oh, I'm making it. I'm like, yeah, you can tell because you're doing these certain little hints that you start to notice as you're watching her videos and things like that. And just, she's so like on social media. So she's got her whole life on this like completely under a microscope, and it's like, why? I'm like, you have to understand when you do these things, you get in there. It's like now you're under the microscope. So get ready for anything you've done ever is going to reappear in your life. Like you're going to have to get ready to battle certain things because some of these people do some deep dives into your life and start checking things out and come in and start saying crazy things to you. And I think it's one guy I used to watch on Twitch called, his name was King Scratz. I don't know what he changed his name to now, but he had the conversation. He's like, he'd be the first one to tell you that when it comes to social media, he's like, get ready because these people will come at you. He's like, I'll be the first one to tell you, no bull crap. These guys are coming for you. They're looking for everything you do and things like that. And it's sad that that's where we've decided to go as society, is that we decide to try and bring each other down instead of bringing each other back up. And there's a lot of other people coming down the line that I'm going to highlight. Like there's a band named Spirits has a whole page about mental health. They have a whole group on Facebook. And so did Lives Lost. They had a whole group on Facebook and things like this in different groups, which is great. But I didn't even know it even existed until they said something about it. And it's like, well, let's get these guys on here, highlight them, and start showing off all these things that they're doing on different social media apps and things like that. So it's just crazy because it's like, this is how you guys choose to go do things. I love that these guys are doing, and like I don't think enough people are talking about them. And obviously they're not talking enough because there's no reason you and I would be talking if this conversation wasn't necessary, even though people say, oh, we're talking about it. Are we really though?
What are we doing about it?
Exactly. And it's more powerful, more voices I get, the more people that are unified in mind. It's a stronger message because it's just not Pete saying it's Pete and Pete's guests or Pete's and these guys are all sticking together and things like that, and I've all the time I've been doing this so far, it's just like you meet these people doing incredible things out there. Like I had a guy from Canada, Leroy, who's doing amazing work with kids at starting the age of 5. He's teaching them how to emotionally regulate everything. So, and he's teaching them the technique, just breathe. He's like, hey, just breathe, and these kids are giving responses that most adults wouldn't even give you. Hey, you know what you did wrong? The kid looks at you and goes, yeah, I didn't breathe before I made a decision. And it's crazy to hear a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old tell you that. Versus an adult now is like, oh, well, the adult here is acting like these kids are acting more mature than most adults. And it's like, what? It's insane, though. It's kind of similar to what you used to do. You're just asking people, are you happy? Now I'm just asking people about their stories and the things they're doing. And it's great. And then, when you get social media involved, it's like, oh, here we go.
I used to get asked all the time, what happens when the camera stops recording?
Exactly.
Do we talk to them longer? Do we offer them resources? Do we give them a hug? What do we do? And I would always be the first to answer those questions because I think that, it's important for people to understand that, yes, we're sharing their stories and we're interviewing them for these platforms, but ultimately we felt that it was like a duty to do whatever we could, post recording to kind of help them in some way, whether it was offering a hug or sitting down with them further, or offering them resources. So that was something that we always did, especially if it was someone that was, really high risk or really just needed some extra time to vent. So I feel like it's a responsibility almost when you come across someone who's really suffering to do the best you can, but then if you can help them however you
Yeah.
can, then you do so. I mean, that should be fundamental to our humanity, but it's not for everyone.
No.
And so that's why for the next chapter of what I've been working on, I wanted to focus on humanity and whether we feel it's still there or the lack thereof, or what we can do to get that back, because it's essential and we need that aspect. Same like with mental health, we need the voices of folks that are going through it or have been through it. um, I've often disliked saying like, oh yes, I suffered from this. I rather say, oh, I survived and I'm still surviving this, because it's something that never leaves you, but you learn how to live with it, and
I
you
like
learn
that.
how to understand. Yeah.
I love
You
that.
learn.
I absolutely
Yeah.
love that. I think that's
Yeah.
great how you're saying that because
Yeah.
we do still do it. We still handle it.
Oh yeah, it never leaves. But
Exactly.
how we perceive the world around us, with it, sometimes it could be, a good, I guess, like a way of seeing what's in front of you from a whole other perspective too. I mean, if you were to come across somebody with mental illness versus someone that doesn't have that perspective, you're going to have two different thought processes, and you're going
Exactly.
to talk to that person differently, and you'll be able to identify with them on a deeper level and really be able to touch what it is that they're really needing from you. And so yeah, I dislike saying that they're suffering from it, or I'm suffering from this, but that we're surviving, and we're living with it, and getting through, getting to tomorrow. That's a big win,
Yeah, definitely.
like, yeah. So I think we need to congratulate ourselves when we get to that next day. But then, if we have the opportunity to talk to someone else that's suffering from something similar or worse, or less, then we should take that opportunity, because what you've learned and what you've experienced could benefit somebody else.
Exactly.
And
And that's
it's no longer a faux pas, right, to talk
yeah.
about this. It's no, and thanks to social platforms, even though, there's also bad aspects of it too, but there's also some good,
Yeah.
because it has that wider reach, and because you can talk to someone around the world and touch someone in China or wherever. But you're two humans connecting, and ultimately that's the point.
Exactly. And that's the great thing about social media is that you meet random people that you may not even know. I had a friend named Ken I've met through social media. He was actually a guest on the show, and how he ended up on the show was that he had seen a video of another person that had come undone it because early on I had somebody cancel, and I reached out to him and, hey man, I said, no, you said you want to share your story. Are you up for it? He said, hell yeah, let's go for it. So he ended up doing it. So someone had seen his, and then Ken was like, "Well, yeah, now I want to come talk about it, Pete. How do you think?" Him and his
Mm.
girlfriend actually both were very moved by what happened, and I tell everybody it's on the show. I said, if your story changes the life of one person, that just one person, you've done enough right there. And everybody's
Yeah.
like, "What?" And he kept saying, "Oh no, it's not going to do nothing." And I said, look what happened, bud. Look at him. This guy's here because he saw your story, and that's what caused the whole thing to kind of spread, like contagious spread of just like, hey, let's talk about these problems out loud. And now Ken and I, we talk like every day. He's always checking in. Hey man, how you doing today? Are you good? And just like that, just simple text. Hey, what's up? And we've talked on the phone several times and things like that. And I meet new people all the time, and the
Yeah.
internet's great for that. But at the same time, you meet these people, like you sit in these chat rooms. Like I had a guy that was here yesterday with me, Austin Carr. He's a sobriety coach, and he sits there on TikTok and he's like watching these comments come through. And he and I were laughing about some of them because I'm like, if you sit there and just watch the chat section, the wildest things get said in there. And I think a lot of them are looking for reaction, and he's just smiling away over there. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, I get that sometimes. And you never know, like, he's thinking about what to respond to him. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I just ignore those people. He's like, they just come in here and start saying the wildest crap possible. And he's like, I'm just putting on a smile the whole time. And he's like, you never know, because he's not even fazed by it. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's great though. I mean, because that's how I met a lot of people is TikTok, and I've met other people through Facebook. I've got a friend now I talk to all the time. Is she's a 2-time international bestseller, Melissa Kim Porter. I mean, her exchange emails all the time. Things just say, "How you doing? How's the new book coming?" And things like that. And and I deal with imposter syndrome at the same time myself, though, because I'm just
Mm.
like, I'm so taken back because I'm like, dude, I'm talking to a 2-time international bestseller author. It's just like a casual conversation. And I told you that a year ago before I even started this thing, that this is what I'd be doing. I even would have told you, yeah, you're out of your mind, man.
Yeah.
That's pipe dreams and things like that. But now I've got them. I talked to Lucy, I talked to these other people, and all these people want to come and talk to me. And they all said the same thing. Hey, I appreciate what you're doing. But what I'm really doing is I'm just allowing people to have a space to have the conversation without being judged. Because when you come in here and we talk about things, there's the only rule I have is that there's no negativity. Like if you're going to say something, that's cool. But
Mm.
and I do when I do the live show, I have live comments coming in. So, you got the constant thing of, people like I'm constantly monitoring the chat as they're talking and listening to them. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
watching on the side of my screen as the comments are rolling in just to make sure nobody says anything wild. But so far, we haven't had anything bad yet, but I do expect it to happen one of these times. You're going to get
Sure.
somebody who thinks they're funny and start
Right.
making these things. But I get fellow podcasters and all the time coming and commenting, hey, I think one called the best damn podcast ever. They come like twice now and they're saying hi. And there's another guy that was a part listening to one of their network shows, comes by and says hello all the time too, and things like that.
Yeah.
And then I have, it's great because it started from just having nobody to having people viewing, and then having at least one viewer, and then going to 2 viewers. Sometimes I have 4 viewers, and then everybody asks, "Oh, hey, where's it at?" It's on YouTube. But the nice thing is, so we have a radio app too. So like I'm on the radio too, so I'm heard around the world. So if you can't be there physically to watch it on YouTube, there's also all these other things now.
Right.
And that's the benefits of social media. Then, like I said, I take the audio side and I put it out there for everybody who likes everything else. And one guy, he said, "Oh, I have iHeartRadio. Are you on there?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "Oh, well, okay, I'll have to check it out then." And it's great because I'm catching everybody now from all these different places. It's a lot of work. I mean, but
Yeah.
it's great to
Yeah.
hear people are enjoying it, because people are like, "Hey, I listen to your podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, that's right, I have a podcast." It's funny though, because when people say that to me, I'm just like, "Oh, really awesome!" Like one of these couple of these people on the where we had matched up on the site we're on, he was like, one guy was like, "Yeah, I watched in a couple of your episodes. I really like the conversational piece and how you do things." And I'm just like, it still takes me back, because I'm
Sure.
just like, "Oh yeah, they're talking about me."
Yeah. And sometimes you see yourself in people, that you
Mhm.
talk to. And that's really interesting because it's almost like a mirror
Yeah,
where they're saying almost like they're reading from your life story, and you're like,
yeah,
whoa, whoa. So that's interesting also. What you said earlier about interviewing people that are bestsellers or international, whatever kind of recognition. At the end of the day, they're still humans. If you
hmm
strip all of that away, they're still humans. And so, for me, stripping that, away and just recognizing that it's just two humans talking about happiness or two humans talking about
yeah,
humanity.
exactly.
I interviewed a celebrity who was in television and film. She still is. And I was so nervous to interview her. And, of course, you get nervous and you internalize and you're like, oh, can I do this? What if I do a bad
I
job,
try not to
etc.,
go I
etc.
try to go do that fangirl thing when you talk to some of them too. It's like,
Yes, that too. And I researched the crap out of her and I learned so many things I didn't know before. And then
yeah,
I read her book, which, most people will say, oh, I read your book. And they really didn't, but I
yeah.
totally did. But yeah, she was an amazing human. And I reached out to her after I transitioned to this new project and I said, hey, would you like to be on this other show that focuses on humanity? And she was like, sure, sure. Because at the end of the day, even though she become this awesome actress, she was like, look, I'm just this prostitute from LA that, just happened to have like this amazing stroke of luck. And I may have, took some acting classes and did Broadway and did all of these things, in film and TV. But at the end of the day, I'm still this,
Yeah,
hooker.
and that's the great thing about it, is how human they are,
Yeah.
and how real they end up being. Like I said, Lucy was like that too. She was like, "I'm just a
Hmm.
regular person," and I'm like, "This is just to me. It's just like I'm just starstruck, man." I'm like,
Yeah.
it was cool, but at the same time, she was just so cool to talk to, made the conversation better. Just like the person you were talking to, and
Hmm.
I mean, and I was going to ask you though. I seen your in your profile it said filmmaker.
Yes.
When I saw that, the first person I thought of was actually a guest ad on the show named Stephanie Aycock. She's actually in the process of trying to get a film produced called Bloom. And the idea is that it's the different way to look at mental health. And she said it's basically
Mm.
based on part of her life story events. She lost her dad's suicide and things like that. And she had talked about how it's got a funnier side to it and things like that. And it's like a different way to process it versus just cramming information down people's throats. it's, you know, and it's going to be an interesting project when she finally gets it done and stuff like that too. And she was so
Yeah.
cool to talk to and everything
Yeah.
and things like that, you know. And it was just, she said her dream though was to have Jim Carrey be in the film. And I was like, hell yeah, if you get him, let me know, because I'd love to talk to him.
Send them the script. You know, the worst they can do is say no. I mean,
Exactly.
that's really the gist of it. Writing it, when you feel like you want to write something, then you just put the pen to the paper. Stephen King said it. Aldous Huxley, who's an amazing sci-fi writer. I tend to read more literature, sci-fi writers, as opposed to more, you know, modern crap stuff. And so
She
yeah,
doesn't
they all
like
say the
Twilight,
same
guys.
thing.
Sorry.
You just put the pen to the paper.
Yeah.
And then with podcasting, you just hit record and that's it. I started doing podcasts in 2012, and I had this little tiny little stick microphone that looked like a Q-tip, and you connect it to your computer, and it was the worst audio you'd ever heard in your life, but I just did it. And I just kept going back whenever
It's
I
a rush,
could.
isn't it? It's just such a rush. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you're so nervous at first, and then you're just talking about nonsense, and then you're reading news just to fill time, but then you start bringing in other people, and it just grows organically. But a lot of people will ask you like, oh, I want to get started, but how do I get started? And the answer is just hit record and just go, because no one has a perfect formula. And if they do, then, you know, it's something that's been refined over time. So it just takes time. I think that for folks also that suffer from mental illness, some tend to dive into the arts, and it's the arts that save them, whether it's drawing or writing or music and visual, audio. Now that there's so many ways for us to express that, I think that's a saving grace for myself. I did music since I was young, and then I did videos with like a big old over the shoulder camcorder and various little cameras. I remember editing with I think it was like Windows Movie Maker before
Yeah,
all
God,
software
yes.
existed. And then I
Damn,
would just
yeah,
delete
we're
it.
going old school now. Here we
And
go.
I would lose all the shows, you know. It was
Yeah.
terrible. But it was, you have the most fun creating all of these things that sometimes people wouldn't see. And so I think that's what the difference is between like making videos or content or films now digitally, right? Because you can put it out there and you can save it. But back then in the 90s, you're making something that if your computer crashed, you were never getting it back. But then you were also okay with the fact that no one saw it either.
Yeah.
So it was just a weird time. But I
God, I
loved
love
doing short
movies
form
so
content
much.
and editing. Yeah, and watching movies. That was my babysitter as a kid because my parents weren't there. So
What's your favorite movie of all time?
I don't have a favorite movie of all time. I have so many favorite
Who's your
movies.
favorite director? There's there somebody that you really resonate with that you're like, man, if they got something coming out, I'm going to see it regardless.
I have a few folks like that. I can never answer that question because there's just
I
a lot of
personally like
folks.
Kevin Smith. And because, you know, everybody knows Kevin Smith as Jay and Silent Bob and all that.
Right.
No, Kevin did other films. He did Clerks, which I could resonate with 100%, dealing with customer service.
Yeah.
He also did Chasing Amy, Dogma, and, you know, other things like that. And I
Love
just,
Dogma. That was
you know,
amazing.
that's what I'm saying. You know, Kevin's done all these other films, and whenever he mentions names, people are like, "Oh, who's that?" I'm like, you know, Jay and Silent Bob. Oh yeah. I'm like,
Right.
you don't know who
And he
Kevin
has
Smith is?
podcasts.
Mallrats, and he did Mallrats too. Oh my God, he'd be a dream guys to have on here, because I just think Kevin, just to talk to him, he'd just be a cool guy to talk to in general. Like, he always seems so nice every time you meet him, and it's great when you get those people that break that stigma around being an actor and things like that and being all famous. And they just talk to you like normal people. Like, you know, like I'd be starstruck a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, hey, this is Kevin Smith, man. He came here to talk to me. Let's talk, Kevin. Let's talk about this stuff, you know. And it's great, you know. And then like one of my favorite movies all the time is called Boiler Room. It's the one that has Giovanni Ribisi and has like what is it? Vin Diesel's actually in there too. And it's about these guys that have a fake stock marketing company. And the line that always cracks me up is Ben Affleck comes in the room and he's talking to him. And he's like, you know, money can't buy happiness, this and that. And he's giving them this whole speech about it. He said at the end of the day, he's like, you know, he's sitting there just giving this pep talk and everything. And you only see him for very short periods of time. And like 2 times in the movie, he comes in, you know, and he has such an impactful moment because he's just like, that's it. And then it sticks with you that he's talking about all these different things. And then the guy calls him and he's like, he's just sitting there eating breakfast. And he's like, yeah, you know, the New York Times or something. Okay, so why should I buy your crappy paper or whatever? And the guy's like, all right. He goes, well, He goes, no, I already get the other one. Click, and just hangs up after this guy puts so much effort in trying to sell him. I just laugh every time I see that part of the movie. It was so great because it's just
Yeah.
like, it cracks me up, man. And I love movies to death. Like, I'll watch anything. I
I
love
love
it.
how we could basically, watch our entire timeline or chronicle our life based on these films. Oh, I watched
It's
this one
funny
when I
you
was
say that, though.
5,
My
this one I
life,
was 10. Yeah.
I resonate the most with the movie called The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
I love that movie.
I used to
Oh, love
if
it.
you guys have never seen that movie, you need to stop what you're
Must
doing, hit
watch.
pause, and go watch that
Yeah.
movie. It is phenomenal.
So I remember when American Beauty came out
Mm-hmm.
and Schindler's List. I mean, they were like a ways apart, but I watched them at this like back to back.
Yeah.
And I remember I was a waitress at the time and I was a teenager, and I remember watching both of them like back to back and then just going to work like stunned because I was like, what in the hell did I just watch? And I
Exactly.
was just so overcome by all of the symbolism and just the amazing imagery. And it was intense, but that's what I miss movies that really make you feel and that you can just put yourself inside of those characters and really experience what they experience. I think that
Yeah.
there are still films like that, but definitely not enough.
Yeah,
So
exactly. What do we had like American History X was always an interesting
oh
perspective of
yeah.
film, to watch
Crash was a
Edward
good one,
Norton. Yeah, that one
right?
too.
Yeah.
And it
When I
was
was a
just
little kid, I used to watch movies in my mind. So I
yeah.
would listen to music and then I would just put together these movies and what was happening with the music. And I thought everybody did that. So then come to find out, not everyone does that, but
Yeah.
that was my pastime and people watching. I'd go
Yeah.
to the movies at 12 and by myself I'd walk to the movie
Mm-hmm.
theater and I'd watch movies all day long. And then I'd go to a cafe and just, sip on tea and just think about what I just watched and analyze it. And then I just watch people. And I think that that's what led to me eventually wanting to make, films. I make documentaries, especially because you just become so observant and then you share that story.
Every time you see a
So
documentary, movie I think of, you ever remember Super Size Me, the one with Morgan?
yes.
Yeah, him. Morgan did an interesting perspective on that, though. Like, people didn't really think about what they're eating until they saw that movie, and then after that, it's like you change your perspective of how you look at things. And all he did was just make a movie. And then what was the other one? God, I think what the other guy's name was now. Did another one too. Fahrenheit 9/11. Remember the movie
Michael Moore.
there you go.
Yeah.
Michael Moore, when
Yeah.
he came and did that one too, he started opening your eyes to a lot more things. And it's like
Columbine
documentaries
too.
are great. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
And it was just like it's crazy because people don't think of these things, and then when it's brought to
Yeah.
the forefront, then it's like, oh, okay, now I know about all these things. I'm like, oh, hey, it's been happening for a long time. I'm glad you finally joined the conversation. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
movies are great though for that though. Like, but I feel like sometimes they over dramatize certain things, and I think that's where people have trouble distorting reality, or separating reality from fiction to where it is. Like when it comes to mental health, they're like, oh, I don't want to be sat there and analyze the whole time. It's not how it works though, guys. Like I think people see too many things, hear too many things, so much disinformation that gets said to them that they're like, well, I don't want to be put on pills. You have that choice when you go in there. You tell them, I'm not looking to get pills at this point unless it's an absolute necessary need, that
Mm-hmm.
I'm to that level where you feel like I'm a danger to myself. Then we can have the conversation about that. And I think people need to understand that it's not what it seems. And I know it was the other
Right.
thing. A lot of people say, oh, I don't want to talk about my feelings. Then don't talk about your feelings. Just talk to someone. Just let
Mm-hmm.
them hear you talk to them. And a lot of times these guys can tell exactly what you're doing, or they'll know more about yourself within the first 30 minutes than you would know about your own self. Like, I met a guy named Dr. Tim, and Dr. Tim and I were talking, and he had said within the first 10 minutes of the conversation, he was like, Pete, has anyone ever told you have the personality trait where you want to make everybody feel like they're included? Were you abandoned as a kid? And I was like, Dr. Tim, are you reading my mind? Like, this is weird, bro. Like, could you stop?
Yeah.
It was so cool though, because he'd tell you the technical side and then he'd break it down. And me and him and another person were having this conversation, and Tim could just keep up with the conversation. It was great. He was just all over the place. Like, but he kept up flowing with it and kept like throwing out these little nuggets of knowledge. And it was like, okay, well, let me break this down into something somebody can understand. Like, there's people that understand the technical side, and then he just smoothed it out for everybody else to understand. And it was so much fun to have conversation
Yeah.
with him too.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's something to be said for cultural perspectives too,
Mm-hmm.
because there are various cultures where talking about mental health is an absolute no, and it
Exactly.
still is. I remember growing up, my family background is Mexican American. We're all born here. My mother's family, they were born in Mexico, and
Mm-hmm.
She was raised to believe that you don't talk about feelings and you just hold it inside and you just work through it. But then, I'm in the second grade and I'm crying for no reason, and my teachers are calling my mom saying, why is she crying? And she's like, I don't know, she's just a sensitive kid. And they're like, you should really take her to see someone. And she was like, meh. And so it just rolled, into one thing after another as the years went by. But I think back and I'm like, had I actually gotten help, back then as a
Mm-hmm.
kid, then would things have been different, or would I have been able to navigate more successfully? So
True.
anytime we can talk to someone, whether, professional or just talking at all,
Yeah.
it begins that journey that we desperately need. And so, and I guess like in the last 10 years, my husband and our son, he had his son when I met him.
Yeah.
He was 7 years old, and then we were together for 11 years, and within that time, our kid's biological mom died of cancer, and then
Nice.
I adopted him when he was 14, and so
Yeah.
he's now my son, and he's always been since I met him.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so our whole world just changed over this huge period of time. And we saw a family therapist because that was our kid's regular therapist, and
Yeah.
then we came into the mix and started seeing the therapist with him. And so we just grew this relationship over time. And then cut to this year, we've separated, and he lives in Colorado, and his son is still here in the state with me, and we live nearby each other. He's 21 and he's doing good. um, but now I'm seeing that same therapist, and so it's really interesting to go from a discussion about about the family, because I would hide behind the family and what they're
Mm-hmm.
going through, and how it was my job to make sure they were okay, and make sure my son was okay, and that my husband was doing whatever he needed to do. And then now it's like those two items are no longer shielding me from talking about myself, and now I actually have to, because there's no choice. But I went to her, because I was like, okay, I can't deal with a marriage ending on my own. I know I can't. I'm not one to like be alone, so I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to someone about it. And then the
Yeah.
fact that she knew me for all these years, that really helped.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but yeah, I realized, I was like, yeah, I was hiding behind my own family. And so when I was asked, are you okay, how are you doing, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. The kid's doing great in school, my husband's doing good,
Oh
blah blah
yeah, yeah. You
blah.
can see it right
And
there.
it was
Yeah.
just like behind everyone. And even like my own sessions, at first I was talking about what everyone else was doing, and then
Yeah.
I'd leave and I'd be like, but wait a minute, I didn't talk about me at all. So then eventually I decided, okay, look, I'm just gonna bear it all and then let you make what you will of it. But yeah, I made that decision to finally start talking about myself, and I discovered, okay, I was hiding behind them, but then for me, doing things and staying busy, that helps me cope and that helps me process. So I started kind of finding out little things about myself, and I still am every day. But the journey just never stops. It never
No, it
does.
doesn't.
But
Especially when it comes
us,
to with the whole thing of stepkids too, man.
yeah.
I always grew around having stepbrothers and stepsisters, but I always saw them as my brothers or whatever, and sister. I just
Mm-hmm.
saw them as normal family members. And now my
Mm-hmm.
wife and I, we got married 2 years ago. She had a little one of her own, and I love this
Yeah.
little girl to death. She's great.
Yeah.
Like, me and her hang out all day. She's excited to see me all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like I always tell everybody, I'm like, I don't want any more kids, but now that I have them, it's like they're a package deal at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. She may not be mine by blood, but she's still mine.
Oh
And
yeah.
I tell people all the time, oh yeah, that's my daughter, and everything like that. I have no problem. I said, she may have another dad, which I get along with him just fine. Like I try not to have any conflicts with the other person because I've been in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. I know what it's like, and
Mm-hmm.
my kids of my own actually don't even want to talk to me because my own issues I've had, and it's just if we really got into it, I have a lot of problems. But I mean, it's like I love it when you say that though, because I think that when it comes to stepkids, it's like they're just kids in general. They may not be yours, and you can still love them like your own. They don't have to be your own flesh and blood,
Yeah.
to accept them as your own and look out for them and things like that. And it's
Yeah.
great, because she's excited to see me all the time. I'm excited to hang out with her, and like we hang out, and she likes to play with my podcast and like I have the mic set up and things like that. She'll just sit there and start talking and doing all this other stuff, and it's great to just watch her be so enthusiastic about it. And she's learning little by little, and it's great to, because I remember it just can be flashbacks when my girls were younger too, and you're watching them just start growing up and the things you're teaching them and things like that. And at the same time, she's not mine. So like I have to be careful how I approach certain things and I'm in a better place than I was with my own, like I'm not as angry as I used to be. I don't have as many rage bursts out, things like that. I not to even, if I get upset or something, I don't try and do it in front of her. I'll walk away.
Mm.
I start learning from the mistakes I had made with the other ones. And, my other ones don't even want to talk to me right now, but it's, their mom plays a lot of factor in it too. But, at the same time, I wasn't a pleasant person to be around for her either.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. She has her own faults and things like that, but I did play part in it too. And it's hard to say that at times because I want to be
Mm-hmm.
quick to blame her for everything. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's all her fault. Oh, it's all her fault. This and that. Da, 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 da. I'm like, at the end of the day, I had my own faults of things I should have taken care of a long time ago. And I knew I had issues and I chose to just keep avoiding them,
Mm-hmm.
which leads me to say this, guys, if you have problems, go talk to somebody. Don't let it do what it did to me and just destroy so many things. I've lost so many friends and things like that and other things like that, and all these things have just caused all these problems all these years ago. Just like Vanessa had mentioned, if she gotten help sooner, what would everything look like differently?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay not to be okay is what I tell a lot of people all the time. Like,
Yeah.
guys, you just if you got a problem, go talk to someone. That's all I can say to you. Just let somebody try and help you. Because at the end of the day, what more are you? What's the worst case scenario? It doesn't work for you, okay. But there's more positive than negative that come out of it usually. Some of you may find somebody that resonates with you, like Vanessa has the one she's been talking to for a while, and you may go through 3 or 4 different people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get discouraged. Like, they're just not the people for you. It's just kind of like dating again. You're trying to find the one that matches up with you, kind of thing. It's like, you're both
Yeah.
on a first date every time y'all meet for the first time, and it's like, hey, can you have a conversation with me, and things like that. I
Yeah.
remember the dating scene at fucking 35. Jesus Christ, it was horrible.
Oh man, I'm on a sabbatical from that. Not even going there, but
Yeah, right. Just like
uh,
pass on that conversation, Pete.
I think just like you said, talking to someone, and then if there's not a therapist, just talk to a friend, talk to a family member, talk
Exactly. Just
to
talk to
someone you feel
somebody though.
comfortable to
For the love of
confide
God,
in.
talk to someone.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because either they're gonna listen or you're going to find someone else who will listen. I love telling people, if you don't have anyone to listen to you, then hit me up. All of my social is the same. Hit me up, and I will gladly chat with
You know what?
you.
Let's go ahead and plug those socials actually as we get ready
Yeah,
to wrap up here.
sure.
Vanessa, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Sure. So all of my social platform handles are at Vanessa the Vivacious. Clear and simple. That's
There
it
you go.
on
Boom,
all the
like simple to the
platforms.
point.
Yeah.
And then
And
your
then
podcast, are you pretty much on everything though, like I am, just kind of like Spotify all the
yes,
way down the
yes,
line?
it's on all of them. So right now it's all pre-sub. I am working on a pack of episodes to release, so that way it's just constantly flowing
Yeah.
weekly. But there is like a trailer episode on there, and you can sub on all the channels already for
Awesome.
everything. Um, I'm curious though, because we didn't really get to dive into you, but what I want to know is, when I first saw the name of your show, and I'm like, Pete versus anxiety. So what's the score? Is Pete winning or is anxiety winning? But then I also want to know, what was that tipping point where you went from being in that bad, place, or the anger and those really dark places, to where you are now? What was that tipping point? Was it an
Okay. Well,
experience
we
or
can cover that real
yeah?
fast. We're good. I got time because this is my podcast. I make the rules about this thing. Oh, okay. So the way Pete versus anxiety was even invented was that I had an incident one day where I had just went completely nuts on my wife. Like and to explain the situation, I don't even remember what the conversation. Something totally stupid, and I just flipped out on the poor girl. I just went nuts, and I dealt with these rage issues for a while, and things that I've noticed, and she's been through a lot with me, and I love her to death, and I really do appreciate her. And what had happened is I got so mad one day about the stupidest thing. I started slamming around things, telling her she needed to leave and things like that. And it wasn't even that one in the tipping point. It's like I got so mad, and when I looked at her, I just started yelling at her for no reason. And she looks at me, and my wife is the person that normally she's ready to start swinging right after that conversation. But she just looked at me and said, okay. And I don't know what it was, just something in my head just clicked like, whoa, okay, I need to get some help because this is not okay that we're continuing to do this. And for her to just respond like that, it was something that like that just caused it. So then I started doing my own therapy sessions. And then I started realizing that, a lot of my issues came from when I was 10 years old. My mom abandoned me and things like that. And I deal with a lot of rage issues that were coming from a lot of that. And all through my life, it's just been a constant battle of, and my dad was always angry too when we were kids as well. So that didn't help either because as kids, we watch people, what they're doing. So like, we'll watch what your parents doing. So
Mhm.
now knowing all that, that's why I tried to do better for the little girl. But Pete versus Anxiety, because I originally had a podcast actually called Pete's Corner Store. So I was just something different. I was like, just like you, I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna get up one day and just say hit record. Okay. So I hit record, had a great first season, was just me talking about the most random topics ever. Second season, I brought somebody in and it just turned into a complete disaster. Like she was talking about the craziest subjects you could even think of. Like, what did she say? One episode, she was talking about adopting a kid off the Asian Fortnite server. And I was like,
Oh,
do you
whoa.
you know what I'm saying? I'm like, do you
Yeah.
realize what you're saying here? And at the time, I didn't stop it either. You know, I didn't think
Mhm.
about what I was doing. This is before I started getting help. And then after I look back at it, I'm just
Mhm.
like, yeah, I'm ashamed that that didn't even happen. And and I've always had these like really bad anxiety attacks. Like when my wife were dating, she was getting ready to move out here with me, and I think anything would just trigger me just to go completely like head start spiraling because my ex had cheated on me, and a
Mhm.
lot of that was a lot of problems that too. So I had a lot of trust issues with people. So like little things in the back of my head would just start talking to me and saying, "Oh, this person's cheating on you, this and that," and then the anxiety attacks would just kick up, and it just starts swirling, and thoughts would just start going crazy. So on a good day, Pete's winning. Other days, anxiety's winning. But it's a counterbalance most days. I work on it every day. I'm learning new things. I work on it. My wife's given me a lot of good techniques and things. She's just like, just if you have to shout it out loud, say, hey, that's not
Mhm.
happening, and things like that. And I talk myself off the ledges. A lot of times I tell people, which is like the ledge of me just start freaking out versus
Mhm.
just staying there. And a lot of times, it's an accomplishment when I don't, my head's so swirling and and learning different things that go, kind of like with text messages. Like if people don't respond back fast enough, I used to have go into a complete panic attack and start calling them and
Mhm.
things like that. And I don't do any of that now. It's like and I also have depression, which is which
Yeah.
is fun because one feeds into the other, and then we're having a good old carousel here of fun. And there's some weeks it's just like I don't want to get out of bed, but I get up to do the show every week because it means that much to everybody. And most people don't know I struggle some weeks, and it's just like if I go to and I take breaks from social media all the time a lot because I'm just like, I can't deal with the pressure of everybody wanting
Mhm.
me to be in one place. And then the constant invites to come to these TikTok lives and things like that. And it's like, it feel like once it starts trying to take control of my life, I'm like, no, I'm like, and then my anxiety starts kicking up because I'm like, well, these people don't like me because and it's a constant battle. So that's how Pete versus Anxiety was made, and everybody likes the
Mhm.
name too. Like, oh, they all think it's all only about anxiety. I'm like, no, we're talking about everything: mental health,
Mhm.
anxiety, depression, all these stuff down the line. You know what I mean? And it's a constant battle. And so it's always
Sure.
me versus my anxiety half the time, because a lot of times when I start this thing, it's just like I'm getting nervous at first, but then when the conversation starts rolling, it's just like that's it, I'm good to go, and it's
Mm.
it's a constant battle in my head of things like that. So, but it's been like I said, it's been a pleasure doing these kind of things, and I think it's getting better little by little. And I go talk to my therapist. I do weekly sessions,
Yeah.
and they gauge, they start like registering how bad it is, and and it's just like some days it's okay, other days are worse, and things like that. And it's like I said, it's a constant battle. So that's really what the title's about.
I really like that you shared that with me. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
definitely.
I think just two takeaways, like everything that you went through, and then just bottling up and just thing on top of thing, and it just really mounting into all of these like explosive events. Like that
Hmm.
makes perfect sense. But then you learning how to deal with it and get those techniques and talking to someone made all the difference.
Yeah,
And
and I support
in
system
the
to it.
grand
So,
scheme of things, in the
yeah,
grand scheme of things, I would like you to think every morning when you get up,
yeah,
Pete's still here, man.
yeah,
Like just say that to yourself, and that's automatically a win for the day. And
yeah.
anyone else listening or watching, do the same thing. Insert your name is still here, man, and that's an automatic win to start your day.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's good to have a great support system too. Like I said, my wife, when I deal with her, she always is constantly keeping me in check. It's like my ex will let me do whatever I want.
Mm.
And I've never met somebody until now with her. It's like she's like, oh no, hell no, you're not gonna do that. You better no, you better stop. No, no. She'll just say, hey homeboy, you better stop. And it's funny when she says it too, because I try to keep a straight face because I start laughing sometimes, but she's being serious because she deals with her own things too.
Yeah.
And but she understands too, though, at the same time, for those, for those people that don't understand what your partner is dealing with, it's okay to do some research to learn what they're dealing with all the time, or figure out what you can do to do better for them to help them out. Because it's a struggle for them some days. Some days it's harder than others. Like my wife and I, some days we have trouble, we don't even talk to each other most of the day. And it's just because we just want our space to do our own thing, and I just kind of, okay, and it's,
Yeah.
it's okay, guys. Like I say, to not be okay though. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely the main point of the whole subject is,
Yeah.
but
For
yeah,
sure. One tiny story, and I'll make it quick. When I was 18, I was a crisis counselor because,
yeah,
patients make the best counselors.
yeah,
And there was a kid who killed himself on webcam. He
yeah,
took a lot of pills, and this was like 18th birthday. And
Jesus.
I'm talking to him, trying to talk him off of this ledge, and he took all these pills on camera, and that was just like, just heartbreaking. But after that, when I had time to sit with it and talk it through and get through that, I remember telling other people in a similar situation that were at that edge where they're wondering if they're going to stay around or not. I would tell them to stay anyway. That what happens the next 5 minutes or the next 5 hours or the next 5 days, it could be totally different from what you think it will be. So just stay
Yeah.
anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always like to tell people too, thank you for being here still, especially the ones I talk to that have made those comments. I message them weekly, like, hey man, how you doing? I'm glad you're still here. When they respond back, hey man, I'm glad you're still here. How you and it just go on with the conversation and things like that. And it means a lot when you say those things to people. Those
Mm.
people have those hoodies and things like that. My buddy Ken, he has one of those hoodies that says things like that on there too. And he walked up to another guy, had the same thing. He's like, hey man, I'm glad you're still here too, and stuff like that. And it leads to, words are very powerful. And, as I always sign off the show, I say, like, it costs nothing to be kind to somebody. One kind of act you can do can save somebody's life or even make their day. It means more than people even realize. And I think people need to realize that kindness goes a long way at the end of the day. You just saying hello to somebody, you just saying, hey, how you doing? Just like we had talked about earlier, man, it makes a huge difference in people's lives. You'll see there's people that used to not say a single word to me that come into where I work, and now they have full conversations with me because all I did every day was just say, hey, how you doing? How's it going? And you may not get a response every day, and it's okay, but they still appreciate it, even if they don't tell you.
Mm.
So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap up this episode of Pete vs. Anxiety. Everybody knows exactly where to find me. I'm pretty much everything on Pete vs. Anxiety on Instagram, all the way down the line. Vanessa, thank you so much for being here. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad I took this interview.
Same.
We definitely want to check in again. I'd love to be on the show sometime for Humanity 2.0.
Yes,
It'd be great.
100%.
So invite me anytime. I'm definitely down.
Will do. Thanks for having
So
me.
definitely, guys. And as I always say, it costs nothing. Nothing. Be kind to somebody. One kind act you could do could save somebody's life, or hell, you can make their day. I'm Pete for Anxiety, saying, I'll say, don't ask how your day is, but ask how your mental health is today.